state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jet has nearly 415 kilograms of rare earths. So you can imagine the kind of rare earths which are going into technology in terms of, critical technologies, in terms of, high-end, cutting-edge, communication systems and what have you.
Colonel Anurag Awasthi is a graduate of National Defence Academy, Defence Services Staff College, the Higher Command Course, and the prestigious Indian School of Business, and has over 3 decades of rich experience in the government and in the corporate sector, besides working in the United Nations.
One of the biggest anomalies was sorted out there. Now you see, EU with 27 nations is a member of G20. And Africa with 54 or 55 nations was not a member of G20.
Yes. He is a senior consultant to the government of Telangana and is presently the CEO of Escape Velocity Media Works Private Limited, focused on critical electronics, defense and aerospace domains.
The Africa and India trade in 2023 was around $98 billion. That's quite a lot of money. And in the last year, as the last reports, if I remember correctly, or what I've read, is around $103 billion, which is colossal.
Our conversation today will center on India's historical connections with African countries, the significance of critical minerals and rare earth metals, India's growing involvement in Africa, the role of tech advancements in India's quest for critical minerals, the future of India-Africa ties, and the impact of polar regions on global power dynamics. Welcome to the CyberPeace podcast, Colonel Awasthi.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you for having me here.
How are you doing, well?
Very good. Yeah, thank you.
So we look forward to an engaging and insightful conversation on the CyberPeace podcast today. So starting off with India's influence in the African continent. India's historical ties with African nations, rooted in anti-colonial solidarity and diplomatic ties, had significantly influenced its current strategy for securing critical minerals and rare earth metals. But by enhancing these long-standing relationships, India seeks to enhance cooperation in resource exploration and sustainability. So how has India's historical ties with African nations influenced its current strategy in securing critical minerals and rare earth metals?
All right. Now, the topic is on the rare earths, which are going to be driving the entire world. In fact, I was reading an article just 2 days ago, which said that the state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jet has nearly 415 kilograms of rare earths. So you can imagine the kind of rare earths which are going into technology in terms of, critical technologies, in terms of, high-end, cutting-edge, communication systems and what have you. Now, I take you back to 1987 when, Deng Xiaoping, then in China, opined, and I quote, "If the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths." So how profound a statement was that, see, Preeti? After so many years, post-1987, today, China looks at nearly 60 to 65% of the rare earths as a stronghold insofar as, their production is concerned, and more than 90% in terms of processing that is concerned, right? Now, when you look at the mining industry of Africa per se, it is known generally that Africa looks at around 30% of the rare earths of the earths as we look at it. But the mining capacities in Africa today still look at around 1% of mining of rare earths as we speak today. The bulk of it obviously being gold, copper and diamonds, right? Now, let's now segue back to as to what are the Indian, footprints and what is the Indian, looking at Africa as the way, it should look. Now, I take you back last year, to the G20 summit, which was held in Delhi. One of the biggest anomalies was sorted out there. Now, you see, EU with 27 nations is a member of G20. And Africa, with 54 or 55 nations, was not a member of G20. Yes. And then we are talking things like Global South, and we are looking at, Global South, country to country, and, nation to nation collaborations. And then we are talking about the North South divide and all of that. So, one big anomaly, I think, hats off to our Honorable Prime Minister, which was, eradicated last time, is that the African Union became the member of the G20, which is in itself a very outstanding achievement. Now, let's go further down into the economics of it. The Africa and India trade uh, in 2023 was around $98 billion. That's quite a lot of money. And in the last year, as the last reports, if I remember correctly, or what I've read, is around $103 billion, which is colossal. Also, along with that, it has a population of 1.4 billion, a continent as comparable to your population. But there's a twist in this. So when you look at that population, it is one of the youngest populations on the planet, younger than you. And where are you today, insofar as your connectivity and various other collaborations is concerned with Africa? You have nearly 3 million diaspora there, which is running the show there in terms of retail, in terms of oil, in terms of communications, in terms of telecommunications, in terms of retail. I mean, the retail is generally run by Indians, and I've spent more than a year in Africa serving under the flag of the United Nations, and I can tell you, I think the biggest retailers where I was were Indians. Now, in addition to that, when you look at Africa and India as to how the trajectory goes from here, you have to look at 5 very important things in my view. The first thing is India can't stay away from Africa because it is the future. The second is, a lot of people may not know it, but 15%, 15% of Indian oil's consumption is sourced from Africa. It's strange. A lot of people don't give too much of weightage to it, but 15% is quite a lot in terms of metrics and numerics. The second part is the International Solar Alliance. It's a very, very important thing which has been started by India. And Africa is a very inclusive part of it for renewable energy, because as the population grows, as the economy grows, as the trade grows, you will get energy hungry. So how do you, capitalize on the energy linkages in times to come? The third part is when you look at the security aspect, you look at the maritimity, and you look at the eastern coast of Africa. It is critical. It is critical for the prosecution of operations in the Arabian Sea and all over the place, for a simple reason that there is piracy there. It's a clear and present danger. And of course, the trade routes along the Cape, I mean, that's not something which is unknown to a lot of us. The fourth and important part is the minerals, which you just mentioned. So while we grow, and we have something called the Critical Minerals Mission, which has been, given a shape now by the government of India. So that is a continent which has extreme linkages to make this critical mission for minerals in India shine. And of course, you can leverage this in terms of various other connectivities like the diaspora connectivity and what have you. So all in all, if you look at Africa, Africa is a continent of opportunity. Africa is a continent which is extremely important for India. And Africa is a continent which is extremely important for the world, is the second largest continent in the world.
And also, we talk about the Asia Africa Growth Corridor.
Of course, that is, if and when it comes through,
Yeah.
there are talks on that, but it has some intrinsic issues, the sea and the littoral issues. But as and when it comes through, whether it comes through, before the IMEC or it comes through after the IMEC, now that's a question which, you and I can't answer sitting in oblivion. But well, it's a reality, and it should come through. Why not?
Okay. So, what are the potential geopolitical implications of India's increased engagement in Africa in the context of the global demand for rare earths?
Right. Now let's look at the Indian market. Indian market is driven by various segments. The segments, insofar as the electronic markets is concerned, is wearables. You have industrial equipment, which is a very, very growing and burgeoning segment. You have, segments like consumer electronics. You have the EVs, which are coming up, the electric vehicles, and the non-polluting, this, that, and the other, which are coming up. And of course, you have other electronic markets, which are insofar as the components are concerned and peripherals are concerned, or even the mobile market, which is growing at a very, very steady pace. You would have seen in the news. Now, in addition to all this, you're also becoming an export house of aerospace and defense systems to the world. Now, all these things require rare earths, Preeti. So while your rare earths are present and a lot of impetus is being given to them by the government of India, uh, Africa, which holds a repository of these critical minerals, these great 17 minerals and metals, it's a group of 17 which are going to be running the globe after some time. It is very important that there is a harnessing of these along with the Indian firms there. Now, while you can have issues of mining, there are issues of environment, there are issues of sustainability, there are issues of wherewithal of refining and processing. So all these things makes Africa and India, absolute partners insofar as the future is concerned. Now, if you have the future which is electronic and everybody keeps speaking, technology is the future, then I think the rare earths are the fulcrum.
Okay. Where do you see China stand in this? Because when you talk about rare earth metals, China is obviously, in the loop. So,
No, as they say, it's very
Trunk
difficult.
of Africa.
Yeah, yeah, it's very difficult to talk about anything at the room, except without China being included. Now, this is a common fact these days. See, as a lot of writings also say, and we've just seen Op Sindoor, you know, whatever happened in those 4 days, and now it's in continuum. Any kind of rise of India in terms of any kind of domain will be contested. So while a lot of people may say that you have a lot of great relations with A, B, and C, and there's a lot of thing present here and there and everywhere, but it is not going to be a run over or a pushover. So while there will be issues in forging alliances, there will be issues in looking at areas which are beyond the scope of the Chinese firms who are going to be entering inside. And of course, you will have to look at your own market, right? So most of the time, see, you must understand, market dynamics drive the economy. So it is also about the demand and supply. Now, while China may have hegemony, as I mentioned to you earlier, insofar as the rare earth elements are concerned, we will have to find and devise new means of collaborating, extracting, mining, processing, logistics, sending them to where they are, and of course, then utilizing them in whatever technology that you have to. So it's a complicated chain, but it's not impossible. It's really not impossible because we have some historical ties with a lot of countries in Africa. And like you see, the biggest rare earth, mine, which is now being touted up, is in South Africa. It's got a strange long name. It starts with a K, which is going to be a great filler for China. So how you forge alliances, how you actually look at technology between the two or three or four or five countries as a part of collaboration, how you move that thing, how you extract that thing, how you get it here and how you put it in your, commodities or wherever you want to put it. I think that is the acme of skill. And I'm sure a lot of people are looking at it.
So, how do the interests of these major global powers and Africa's mineral wealth impact India's policies and strategies in the region?
Of course they do. I- It's uh, it's going to be contested, as I mentioned to you. So it's not going to be a run over or a pushover. See why? Because everybody wants the same, piece of the pie, right? So it's not something which, it is sanctimoniously only authorized to you. Alternatively, that land belongs to you, you know, or, your forging of, your relations with a particular country is going to guarantee you that, supply chain forever. This is where your diaspora also comes in. The well-to-do diaspora in Africa now has to come up to the forefront and also be a part of forging these alliances. Because if something is available, as I mentioned to you, then it is not going to be just being given for free. See, as I always mention, there are no, friends and foes in international relations. You're an international relations expert. It's all interests. So, how you navigate this quirky maze and how you forge relations with a couple of countries, and thereafter it has to be a win-win for both. It can't be one-sided, you know calibrations like China is known to do. So
So, in your opinion, what role does tech advancements play in India's pursuit of critical minerals? And how might these technologies affect its ties with African nations?
it's critical. If you have to be a technological powerhouse, no matter how many government schemes get in, which are most enabling, as has been the in the past, they have been in the past. You see the India Semiconductor Mission. I think it's one of the best, missions ever conceived. Now you have the quantum mission, which has come up, the National Quantum Mission. You have various other schemes which have been, invigorated and propounded by the government of India in terms of, critical technologies, semiconductors, so on and so forth. But then all these dreams will only take shape if you have a regular supply chain and a clear, connectivity insofar as these rare earths are concerned at a late time frame. So for this, I think technology is going to be very, very heavily dependent on these minerals. And with Africa as a ally, I think it's a win-win for both.
So presently, India, can balance its economic interests in Africa with sustainable development by fostering partnerships that prioritize renewable energy, tech transfer, and capacity building. So, how can India balance its economic interests in Africa with the need to support sustainable development and also environmental protection of the region?
Now you see, now this is a very tricky one.
Yeah.
Sustainable development is all right. And it is not only about energy that India has a lot of leeway in Africa. You see, as I mentioned to you, there's oil, there is retail, there is critical infrastructure where you are, deeply plugged in insofar as the African continent is concerned. There's telecom. You see the kind of players from India who are there in telecom. But uh, alongside all this, there is a very, very big brahmastra which India has the capacity and will be utilizing this for the good of the continent. And that is the Indian strength in the DPI, or the digital public infrastructure. Now, digital public infrastructure, a lot of people had this notion, Preeti, that uh, it is a payment system, or you can use it as a UPI and this, that, and the other. That's a part of it. That's just a part of it. DPI is going to be a very, very major harbinger of governance. So in places which are inaccessible, those places which are still poverty stricken, those places which are back and beyond, those places which still do not have too much of connectivity, that is where a lot of governance can be done by the Indian digital public infrastructure. If we've done it here, you can do it in Africa. A, help out this continent. B, make it develop the way it has to. C, collaborate further. And D, become partners in the bigger value chain. These 4 points, if you can follow, I think a lot of issues can be sorted out.
So, in the context of critical minerals and rare earths, how might India's engagement in Africa reshape the whole dynamics of global cooperation?
A lot. That's all I can tell you. A lot. Because, see, let me tell you on your show that if you're wanting to counter China and take over that space in a matter of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, no, it's not going to happen. It'll take a little while. Because they have reached a particular level of, mining, extraction, refining, supply chains, etc. Now, all you need to do is to augment your resources, which you have, and make the Indian critical minerals mission shine by collaborations and making strong bonds with Africa. So, if you can do that, I think it should be catering for your markets than to getting into competition with A, B, or C. If we can get this right, I think we should be very comfortable. And I think Africa in this is going to be extremely important in times to come, insofar as leveraging of these collaborations and collaboration on these rare earths minerals are concerned. It's going to be very critical. A, because of the proximity, it's not too far, right? And B, because of historical connect, and C, because of your diaspora. A lot of things are already in place. See, most of the issues in the world can be sorted out culturally and historically also. So that gives a lot of edge to India vis-a-vis the others insofar as Africa is concerned. I mean, you look at the kind of African students studying here. It's a lot of them. So, and they are gaining a lot of knowledge here and going back to their countries and being a part of the civil society. So, if that also is an important facet, people to people relations, and then if culturally you're all right, then technologically you can always
That's where SOSA comes into play.
the law.
Yeah. So, what challenges does India face in establishing a stronger presence in Africa, and how can these challenges be addressed?
I think Preeti, India already has a very strong presence in Africa. This is a very, very important aspect which this government has really looked into for the last 10, 11 years. So the Indian presence in Africa has been bolstered to quite a large, amplitude. Now, along with that, if you look at, there are a couple of United Nations missions in Africa. You look at the kind of the Indian force levels as part of the UN contingents. They are, whether they are chapter 6 or chapter 7, yes. So whether chapter 6 or 7, whether it is peacekeeping or peace enforcement, I think Indian presence in Africa has been quite a lot with a great record. So I think while you're looking at the United Nations footprint, or you're looking at a diplomatic footprint, or you're looking at a business footprint, as I just mentioned to you, all three footprints are increasing by the day, and I think our presence in Africa is growing by the day.
So, how do you envision the future of India Africa ties evolving over the next decade, particularly in the light of emerging global trends?
Very bright, extremely. That's all. 2 words. Very bright, and rightfully so.
Okay. So, moving to our discussion on the polar regions.
Oh, now we move on to the Polar push. Now, polar push is something very, 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 very important.
Yes. So, in the last few years, there is an increased interest in the polar regions, driven by resource potential and strategic positioning that is reshaping the global power dynamics. The countries are asserting sovereignty claims, strengthening military presence, and also investing in infrastructure to gain influence. So, how do you think the increasing interest in polar regions is reshaping the global power dynamics among the nations?
Okay. Now, this is a very, I think this question, I think, caters for the entire mosaic of the polar push, as we call it. Let me go back in history for a bit. I tell you, in the Cold War, uh, it wasn't a zone of contestment. So there was no contest. It was a peaceful zone. Uh, Sometime around 1991, uh, alliances started coming in, and then you had the famous Arctic alliance coming in sometime around 1996. The Arctic Treaty. Yeah, the Arctic Treaty. Okay. Now, once the Arctic Treaty got in 1996, there are some gaps. You've read UNCLOS, UNCLOS and Arctic Treaty. Both of them have no military component, which is embedded in both of them because there was no need for it that time. Right now, lo and behold, the polar ice caps start melting a little. Now, you're looking at three things. You're looking at old military bastions being revitalized by the Russians. Uh, you look at the near Arctic state, rhetoric by the Chinese that, I'm there, main to hu, I'm around. And then, of course, you have the NORAD coming into play insofar as the United States and Canada is concerned. And of course, you have the rhetoric of Donald Trump about Greenland and what have you. Now, when you're looking at this, the polar push, as they call it, there are four things which emerge. One is the minerals which are there, which again we come to the same point of the rare earths and the critical minerals, which are going to be your, lifelines insofar as your digital and technological world is concerned in times to come. The second is energy. Oil, natural gas, and apparently natural gas is going to be a very, very major, contributor to the polar push because there's a lot of it there. That's why you find these Russian icebreakers moving in. You would have seen those huge ships with, which are those icebreakers. Chinese and Russian. Yeah, Chinese a little, but Russian generally. The most important part, which a lot of people are glossing over, is you look at the trade choke points in the world. Where are the trade choke points? The first choke point is Hormuz, which came to fore just now between the Israel-Iran conflict. Right? Yes. Second is Bab el-Mandab going off to the Suez Canal and onwards to the Mediterranean. Right. The third, when you look at it, is the Taiwan Straits and the Malacca. And the fourth is the Panama Canal. So these are four major, trade routes. They're the trade choke points, if I may say so. Now, suddenly, when you look at the polar push, that's another sea route. It obviates a lot of movement. So the moment you open it, of course, the access to to various countries, it decreases manifold logistics costs, time costs, uh, various other issues of trade. Now, along with trade is security. Now, how do you protect those assets or those new sea lanes of communication which are coming up? So that is how, with all of this, so with energy, with old military bastions coming in, the interpower rivalry, and then, of course, the new sea lanes of communication, you have something called it's called the North Arctic Route. Okay. It's the NAR, the North Arctic Route. That's also a part of the whole thing. Okay. Now, when you look at all this, now, do you now perceive the polar push or the Arctic, or even if you go down to the south to the Antarctic, is it now a shared frontier or it's the next global battleground?
I would say it's the second one.
There you go. So it's the new global battleground. Energy, minerals, uh, military presence, sea lanes of communication. There you go. So that's polar push for you, decoded.
Right. So, well, so how can the global cooperation be fostered to address both opportunities and challenges presented by the polar?
See, now, this is a question which can be answered by essentially two parts. One is either you stay away from it, or second is be a part of it. Now, insofar as the Arctic push is concerned, geographically it is very far for you. Insofar as the Antarctic part is concerned, you established a station way back 20 years ago in Antarctica called Maitri. So you have a lot of wherewithal to go there. But the question at hand is today, would you want to go there? Would you want to be a part of a global battleground, or would you want to still keep that place as a neutral zone? Now, this is a policy decision which will have to be taken in times to come.
I think Indian government should move forward and implement new policies because I think in the next 10 years you will see this, like you say, you take emerging tech, cyber, these are all like domains of prominence, that should be because you see China, US, the way forward in terms of, all this advancements in tech. So I think India should actually maybe uh rethink about this.
See, when you start rethinking policy, or you envisage making a policy, you have to look at too many things. I mean, there are too many hinges that you have to remove. Uh, A, does it suit your long-term interests? B, do you have the wherewithal to do it? C, can you sustain it? D, do you have the basic technology to do it, or you need to transfer it? E, would you really want to do it at this juncture, or you can postpone it and give priorities or precedence to somebody else? F, will it make common sense in terms of cost benefit ratio? G, does it make a business case or it doesn't make a business case? H, how does that project a country in the entire community of nations as a country which wants to be hegemonious, or a country who wants to be exploratory, or a country who which looks at power projection, or a country which wants to now focus on areas beyond its control. So you see, I've given you a mosaic of so many things which are just a small part of this bigger policy making. So how it pans out, I'm sure there are some great ignited minds here in the government of India who will take a great call as they have done in the past. So let's wait and watch what they do. But yes, the polar push as a phenomena is a reality. It is a reality. And in the times to come, I think towards the Arctic, it's going to be much higher as compared to the Antarctic. A, because of the littoral distances between countries, geographical distances. And B, you've seen what's happened in the Russia-Ukraine war. You have to understand, the pipelines. You have to understand where they come from, what are their alignments, where do they go. It's all about energy security. It's all about, the military one upmanship. And of course, it is also technology. So how it pans out in Arctic is something we really need to watch in the next 4 or 5 years. Antarctic, I think, it still take a little while because literally Antarctica doesn't have too many countries which are close
But
to it.
China is like enhancing its presence in terms of both Arctic and Antarctic.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But then what it does and can it sustain for a very long time is also a question of debate.
I believe they have the airbase as well. Airbase.
I really don't know what Chinese have. Actually, half of the things in China are not known to too many people. And what
I'm talking about the Antarctic.
yeah, that's what they say. But then, you can't have two planes standing on a tarmac and call it an air base. That's so that also, the definition changes insofar as the Chinese is concerned. So I don't know what China is doing. But see, as I mentioned to you, you first have to align your resources to what you want. Second, do you have that reach? Then can you sustain it? Is it long term viable? And most importantly, can you take out the desired result of what you had anticipated? So whether that is there for China or India or it is for X, Y, or Z is the same thing. So I think the policymakers will have to look at it in times to come. But how you negotiate this is a little problematic. Less said the better. But the Arctic needs to be watched now because there is a polar push which is a clear and present reality.
So, in this context, what strategies should countries implement to balance the national interests with environmental sustainability in their pursuit of polar resources?
See, it's you are going into the polar push because of the environmental damage. Okay, otherwise the climate change would have not affected the polar ice caps, right? That's the starting block. So the whole idea of now talking about sustainability while you've already degraded the environment somehow is a little alien to me. Uh, be that as it may, now what you need to do there, I don't know. You can't preach to the converts actually. How do you preach to them? You really think that in terms of geopolitical underpinnings and the security calculus and various other issues of power projection, you really think, Preeti, somebody is going to be looking at sustainability? Tell me truthfully.
I don't think so. Not
So there you go. You yourself are giving me the answer. So while academically we may say that you should do A, B, C, or D, but will it happen on ground? I have my sincere doubts. That's why I mentioned to you, I think our focus on the Arctic Circle needs to be very, very astute. It needs to be very concerted, and we really need to see what is happening there.
I see most of these policies, they're just on the paper, but in reality, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, so see again, as I mentioned to you earlier, you look at the the Arctic Treaty, or you look at the UNCLOS. It doesn't have any military element in it. So while that framework itself doesn't have a military element in it, how do you navigate this maze? True. So either you build it now with a consensus, which is difficult, or you debunk it and make a new one. That is the second option. Or C, you say that fine, now it is the power play, let the best man win. So the only three options, right?
Yes.
So that is where we are. So that is why, most of the problems in the world, as I mentioned to a lot of people, happen to because of poor staff work and not thinking the policy through for a longer time, a century, maybe even beyond, if you have the wherewithal to crystal gaze as to how things would happen. But then to build something new into an existing thing is a little difficult proposition, especially in this digital age where everybody seems to be running.
So we come to the end of the podcast. Before we end, what message would you like to give to CyberPeace?
CyberPeace, you're doing a fabulous job. Keep doing that you have to do. Make this world a safer place. Do some great studies and research insofar as the international relations are concerned. break out some outstanding reports which are being read by a number of people, including me. I think you're doing a fabulous job by doing all of that. And your CyberPeace talks are outstanding. So I think thank you for inviting me for one of them. So it has been a great pleasure insofar as those talks are concerned. And I wish you guys grow from strength to strength and do well for this country.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you for the podcast, sir.
Thank you, Preeti.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into our show. We look forward to another exciting episode next week. Until then, this is Dr. Preeti signing off.